Erica here, and today I'm bringing you the first video in a series of videos in which I will be discussing historical literary movements and kind of their attributes and importance in the development of literature as we know it today. Today I'm going to be discussing European Romanticism. I will be doing a separate video, which will be my next one, on American Romanticism because there are some differences between the two. European Romanticism was an artistic movement that took place in 19th century Europe, roughly from 1800 to 1860, though, you know, those lines get kind of blurry when we talk about literary movements as to when they faded in and faded out. Romanticism historically developed as a response to the Industrial Revolution in Europe and to the Age of Enlightenment as well. During the Industrial Revolution, of course, there was this huge focus on new technology and modern technology and building things bigger and better and faster. And during the Age of Enlightenment, there was a huge shift in focus towards science and the kind of rationalization of nature and figuring out the scientific explanations for why the world works the way it does, why humans behave the way they do. So Romanticism was kind of a counter movement to this idea of enlightenment. And instead of focusing on all of the science and rationality, Romanticism really focuses on the emotional and on the individual. Most succinctly, Romanticism can be qualified as a movement that focused very much on the imagination and on the aesthetic appeal of emotions. So there was this huge focus on the aesthetic importance of the emotions of the artist or the author in the case of literary Romanticism. The idea of the artistic genius kind of emerged at the same time as this, and there's this idea of a romantic originality that went hand in hand with the concept of an artist who was known as a genius, where that artist, or that author in our case, was writing from a wholly original and emotional place of their own without imitating or drawing on literary traditions of the past. I find this idea interesting in that I think it's impossible to not draw on what you've previously read, but that was the idea, is that these artists were praised from writing from a very emotional place, in that they were almost creating from nothing. That was the idea, is that they weren't taking something else and making it theirs and making it new, but they were just kind of soaking in their own inspiration and creating something from nothing. So we have this focus on not only the artist as an emotional person, but also the writing itself, the novels itself, were very focused on the emotional and the imaginative. And new emotions kind of started coming into play in novels, such as horror and awe and fascination. So during the Romantic period, there's this focus on the artist's emotional state, which then translates into these new emotions that we find the characters in our novels kind of portraying and interpreting. We find works of literature exploring new emotions instead of basic emotions such as anger and love. We find them dealing with things such as apprehension and awe and terror, which hadn't really been explored in a novel form before this. So this idea of the emotional and of the imaginative is very important to Romanticism, but there are a lot of other themes that were dealt with during the Romantic period. One of the huge ones is not only that we are focused more on the emotional side of humanity, but also in the way that emotions are created as a reaction to the beauty of nature. The Romantics saw nature as inherently good, and humans and society as inherently bad. Humans were very corrupt, whereas nature was inherently beautiful and didn't need any explanation. So a lot of times the characters and the authors of this time were reacting to nature, and because of that, there was also this focus on isolation of both the protagonist and the artist. And so you can find a lot of melancholy in Romantic works, a lot of separation between society and the individual. Because of this focus on the emotional and the individual and kind of the natural world, we had an interesting archetype emerge during the Romantic period who is, in present day, literary criticism known as the romantic hero, or romantic heroine as it may be. This is a character who has either been rejected by society or has rejected society themselves, lives out of the social norms, and because of this is a very introspective character. And these characters are very focused on moral obligations and on how they themselves feel about the world around them. So that's one thing that we gained from the Romantic period that you can still see in contemporary literature. Something else that emerged out of the Romantic period is, of course, the Gothic novel. And all the Gothic novel really does is it takes these elements of Romanticism, it takes the fascination with nature, with the self, and with individualism and the imagination, and it combines it with horror elements. So the Gothic novel really focuses on the same themes as all Romantic literature did. It just kind of incorporates these really interesting horror elements as a method of reflecting back these themes. So you have these terrible creatures, oftentimes, or these ghostly elements that represent in some way the individual's experience, the protagonist's experience, and kind of flip that back on itself. So overall, at its core, Romanticism is contained of three main themes, which is the idea that the individual can triumph over social norms. We have this theme of the beauty of nature, and of course, this focus on the emotional aesthetic. Really, you could talk about Romanticism for days. I mean, there are whole programs in universities designed for all of these. I will right now give you a list of authors that kind of embody European Romanticism, but I am not, at this time, going to go into any specific works or how their elements are a reflection of Romanticism. So when we talk about Romanticism, a lot of people focus mainly on the Romantic poets such as Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Lord Byron. We have Percy Shelley and William Wordsworth, and those are very important and influential Romantic figures. But there are also quite a few Romantic novelists, such as Victor Hugo and Mary Shelley, Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, Russian figures such as Nikolai Gogol, are all considered Romantic writers in their own right. And that is all I have for you today. Please let me know how you felt about this video, if you have anything to add. Again, I'm not an expert at all. This is all based on my own research, which has a limited scope. But I have had a lot of fun doing this, and I'm looking forward to my next video. So I will talk to you all next time. Bye.